Although the Pikmin series isn't something that's super known for its plot or continuity, it's definitely a noticeable and respectable detail players can appreciate when playing through the games. However, with the recent release of Pikmin 4, there's been a lot of talks on different social media platforms on whether or not Pikmin 4 is a direct continuation to the first three main game stories, or if it serves as a soft reboot to Pikmin's plot as a whole. So I wanted to give my thoughts on the matter and bring up some of the important things that may or may not prove that Pikmin 4 serves as a timeline reset to the series. What's that, Captain? If people don't like and subscribe, then you'll never appear in another Pikmin game, is that what you're saying?
Olimar.
Well, I guess you heard him. Chop chop. So for starters, the first three Pikmin games follow a pretty clear path cut and dry. Pikmin 1 is obviously where everything begins, with Captain Olimar in the middle of flying through space in his SS Dolphin when suddenly a meteor crashes into a ship, forcing him to land on a strange planet that he cannot breathe on normally, forcing him into a mad dash to find all of his ship parts within a 30-day time limit before his life support systems fail him. Completing this task within 30 days will allow Olimar to travel back to his home planet Hakatate, while not completing it will result in Olimar passing away, where Pikmin will carry him to one of their onions as an attempt at revival for the guy they became so fond of. Pikmin 2 picks up directly where Pikmin 1 left off. Olimar is literally on his way home from his first Pikmin adventure and learns about the company debt caused by Louie, the repossession of his SS Dolphin, and how he'll need to go back there with Louie to collect as much treasure as possible as means of making up for the debt so all those guys won't be out of jobs. Obviously not a whole lot of breathing room for poor Olimar, but yeah. And although it's never explicitly stated, it appears to be heavily implied that Olimar returning to Hakatate at the start of Pikmin 2 was his first time meeting Louie. This is further backed up by the fact that the president tells Olimar the situation with Louie losing the golden Pikmin carrots happened on his first ever mission as an employee while Olimar was on PNF 404. So it just seems more likely that Olimar had not formally met Louie until that very moment when returning home. The rest of the game's events just go about with the two employees collecting the debt, but Olimar having to go back again after collecting all the treasure with the president because Louie was left behind, but the president also just wanted to get more treasure. Pikmin 3, on the other hand, focuses more on the Copite crew of Alf, Brittany, and Charlie, whom all travel to PNF 404 as a way to get more food for their home planet that's in the middle of going through a hunger crisis, mainly focusing on collecting different fruits to not only keep their own life support systems in check, but to, of course, save their home. But they end up crash landing on the planet just like Olimar did in Pikmin 1, so they also need to find a ship part called the Cosmic Drive Key so they can fast travel back to Copite when they have enough food. Just as a quick side note, Pikmin 3 is the first game where the Pikmin planet is labeled as PNF 404, and that will be more important later on. Unbeknownst to these three at the time, both Olimar and Louie were on PNF 404 again, this time having to recover the losses for a second company debt that the president created this time, so they were in search of treasure to repay this debt, which resulted in Olimar getting taken hostage by a creature known as the Plasm Wraith, and Louie getting taken by both the Scornet Maestro and Quackled Myroclops, all the while causing the Copite crew loads of trouble. Louie, anyway, was causing trouble. After getting Louie under control, the crew is eventually able to rescue Olimar from the Plasm Wraith and recover the Cosmic Drive Key, saving their planet and offering Olimar and Louie a ride back to Hakatate as an extra thank you. Now, this wasn't covered until the release of Pikmin 3 Deluxe, but in the side story dubbed Olimar's Comeback, Olimar and Louie have to once again return to PNF 404 because they left behind the Hakatate ship. The president was not having any of that. This side story is more mission-based, but getting the ship back and running again allows the two partners to return home to Hakatate, presumably for good this time. Now, on to Pikmin 4. The opening cutscene from the get-go, I'm sure, could raise some eyebrows of previous Pikmin players, because the story of how Olimar got there seems to be weirdly similar to what happened to him in Pikmin 1. Meteor hits a ship, specifically flying the SS Dolphin, and discovering Pikmin. I'm deliberately using the word discovering here because Olimar is acting as if he'd never seen them before until now, which wouldn't make sense if this is supposed to be a typical continuation to the first three games. He'd obviously had tons of experiences with Pikmin prior to this. Some notable changes between the situation in the first games is he encounters the space dog, whom he dubs Moss in this game, and tames her so he can make his ship recovery journey less stressful, as well as finding his interstellar radio ship part first, which he uses to send out a distress signal to other planets in hopes of being rescued in case things go south. The interstellar radio is something that can't be recovered in Pikmin 1 until reaching the distant spring area, which is kind of the last area of the game. Olimar does end up finding all of his ship parts, but is forced to go back to PNF 404 when he realizes Moss had snuck into his ship's cargo. She's a creature that cannot survive outside PNF 404's atmosphere, so he went back as a way to save her life. However, he ended up crashing the dolphin again on the way back, resulting in his life support systems failing and the Pikmin turning him into a leafling as a way to save his life. Meaning this version of Olimar is technically the bad ending version of Olimar from Pikmin 1. Olimar had been on PNF 404 as a leafling for around a month before the rescue corps picked up on his distress signal. Throughout their time on the planet, this group of adventurers would learn about the other castaways that had been stranded or leafified, leading into the group rescuing and curing everyone they could. Curing them could only be done after harvesting something known as glow sap from glow Pikmin luminols at nighttime. This would be used to save Olimar, but not before fighting him in Dandori matches 4 different times before he gives up, I guess. When he's defeated, he does note that he just wants to see his wife and kids again because it's been so long. That's another thing that seems weird because he should have been with them for a bit after the Olimar comeback story in 3, right? Rescuing Olimar results in the rescue corps hightailing back home but having to go back due to Ochi experiencing the same symptoms as Moss. Since Ochi had been exposed to the planet for so long, he grew a leaf on his tail that glues him to PNF 404. When Olimar realizes what's going on, he doesn't call the planet PNF 404 either. Nobody really does in this game, as far as I can recall. He just calls it that planet or this planet, which is weird because he definitely called it PNF 404 in Pikmin 3. At this point, it seems with all the evidence presented, Pikmin 4 does indeed serve as a more in-depth retelling of Pikmin 1 in many ways. However, there's one thing that could, in theory, throw a wrench into that. Of course, I'm talking about the king of degeneracy himself over there. Louie's entire existence in this game could counteract the idea of Pikmin 4 being a timeline reboot, because Olimar already knows who Louie is in this game. He literally points out in Louie's first appearance post-credits that the two of them are Hakatite Freight co-workers, and he wished someone else besides Louie went out to rescue him. Even after Louie is fully dealt with and brought back to the rescue corps' home base, Olimar can confide in the main character if you talk to him long enough about how he knows Louie has a good heart despite acting like a dumbass sometimes. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but yeah. So it's just strange to me how Olimar talks about Louie in a way here where it sounds like he would if this was a proper continuation to 1 through 3, but there's other evidence supporting the contrary. There's also the whole thing with the original Pikmin 3 crew just not being present whatsoever, which I did find a tad odd, being replaced with extremely similar looking characters named Dobbs, Nell, and York, who are supposed to look like Charlie, Brittany, and Alf respectively. I mean, yeah, York is Alf's brother, but like Dobbs and Nell, I don't think they have any like blood tie connections with Charlie and Brittany. To be clear, I think these characters are totally fine as is. I'm just using this as another minor point to the idea of the timeline being new. I also can't help but wonder if future Pikmin games like 5 or 6 will continue off of the plot that Pikmin 4 built, or if those games will take place in their own little worlds, having no connection to other titles like the way 4 seems to be with the first 3 games. I'm sure there might be some other details I'm missing to support or not support the idea of the timeline reset, but I think at the very least covered the big ones here. You can of course tell me what I missed in the comments to help more context if you'd like, whether it be supporting the idea or not supporting it. So with everything laid out on the table here, there seems to just be more evidence to support the idea of the timeline being reset as opposed to it not being reset. Louie's inclusion and how Olimar talks about him is the only big thing really, and if we're being real, something so minimal like Olimar meeting Louie off screen instead of at the beginning of Pikmin 2 really isn't that serious. Pikmin games were never really about plot to begin with. This is a game about exploring, collecting stuff, and Dandori. Plot stuff is just the extra cherry on top for the overall experience. Now, I don't think there's been any interviews with Miyamoto or other producers directly about this next point, but based on reviews for the game and how it played for me as well, it seems like Pikmin 4 really wanted to be inviting to new Pikmin players as much as humanly possible, especially when it came to the game's gameplay aspects. So it's very possible that this was incorporated with the game's plot too, hence why certain things were just said in very vague manners or left up to interpretation for the player. With brand new players likely never playing the previous Pikmin games since they're brand new, the developers can't just pick up exactly where 3 or 3 Deluxe left off because that could become confusing for some in theory, even if it's just a little bit confusing. To be clear, this is just a little crackpot theory of mine. It's also possible Miyamoto and the others just felt like resetting things for the hell of it because when it comes to games he's leading, continuity within stories isn't something he likes to focus on, hence why Mario games or even Zelda games at times have a lot of loose ends when it comes to major plot events. Which is, again, totally fine. I know gameplay is the most important when it comes to games. There's something like the timeline for a Pikmin game isn't that serious, and I agree, it's not, but I still think this kind of stuff is fun to talk about as long as it's done in a civilized and respectful manner amongst one another. I'd be very curious to hear your guys' thoughts about the timeline though. I'm clearly more leaning towards the idea of it being a soft reboot, but if you think it otherwise, let me know why. But for now, I will see you guys next time. Peace out, take care, bye-bye.